It was a sticky Thursday morning in late July when Marcus Avery, a 38-year-old police chief newly appointed to lead the Greenpoint precinct, stepped out of a dusty sedan on the east side of Ralston, a small industrial town in Indiana. Dressed in a faded hoodie, cargo pants, and worn-out sneakers, Marcus looked more like a local mechanic than the man now in charge of over 50 sworn officers. That was the point. Marcus had served 16 years in law enforcement, climbing the ranks in larger cities, and had seen how department culture could rot from the inside. Greenpoint was notorious for internal complaints and rumors of abuse swept under the rug. As a black man in a position of authority, he knew he'd face resistance. But today wasn't about being liked. It was about seeing his new precinct unfiltered. He walked into the precinct through a rear side door, his eyes catching the scattered officers chatting near lockers and clustered around coffee pots. The building smelled like stale donuts and floor wax. Marcus moved quietly, observing. No one gave him a second look. Until one did. "Hey," a loud voice barked. Marcus turned. A white officer in his early 40s swaggered over, his badge flashing. Officer Callahan. Behind him, two others stood by the vending machine, watching. Callahan looked Marcus up and down. "You're in the wrong building, pal. Shelter's down the block." Marcus didn't flinch. He opened his mouth to speak, but Callahan stepped in, louder. "Did you hear me? Move it. This isn't where you loiter." Laughter bubbled behind Callahan. Marcus stood still, jaw tight. Then, without warning, Callahan leaned in and spat directly in Marcus's face. The room froze. The other officers laughed, nervously, awkwardly, a few all out chuckling. Marcus calmly wiped his cheek with a handkerchief. "Is this how you greet everyone?" he asked, his voice level. Callahan sneered. "Just the ones who don't belong." Marcus gave no response. He turned, walking down the hallway without a word. Minutes later, the intercom buzzed. "All personnel to the briefing room. Mandatory. Now." The room filled with the sound of boots on tile, chairs scraping, and low conversation. Some officers carried coffees, others leaned casually in doorways. Callahan lounged near the back, still amused. From a side door, Marcus stepped in, now clean-shaven, wearing a suit and tie, holding a slim leather folder embossed with the precinct seal. Captain Rowan cleared his throat from the front of the room. "Listen up. This morning, we officially welcome our new chief. He comes with years of experience and a reputation for firm but fair leadership." Marcus walked to the podium. Silence rippled through the room. "Good morning," he said. "My name is Marcus Avery. As of today, I'm your new chief of police." A collective intake of breath. Eyes widened. Callahan's face drained of color. Marcus opened his folder, then closed it again. "This morning, I came in plain clothes. Not to trick anyone, but to observe, to listen, to feel the culture without filters. What I experienced was instructive." The room tensed. Some exchanged looks. Others stared at the floor. "Respect," Marcus said clearly, "is not optional. It's the foundation of this job. Without it, we fail. Not just each other, but the citizens we swore to protect." He paused. "This morning, some of you saw what you thought was a homeless man. You laughed. One of you spat in my face." Callahan shifted uncomfortably. "Officer Callahan," Marcus continued, his gaze steady, "you represent everything that's broken in this department. You're suspended, effective immediately. Internal Affairs will be reviewing every complaint ever filed against you." A few officers gasped. Callahan's smugness dissolved. "If anyone thinks this is excessive," Marcus said, scanning the room, "you're welcome to follow him out." Silence. Change doesn't come easy, but it starts today. It starts now, and it starts with me. If you're here to serve with integrity, I will stand beside you. If not, this is no longer the place for you." He stepped away from the podium. No one moved. No one laughed. The silence was exactly what he wanted. The room remained locked in silence as Chief Marcus Avery took one last glance across the group. A handful of officers. Marcus didn't gloat. He wasn't here for revenge, he was here for reform. He took a slow breath, then continued. We cannot rebuild trust with the public until we clean house internally. That means accountability at every level. No one. He gestured toward the door. Those of you who think this is just a show, or that I'll back off once things settle, don't get comfortable. We're not sweeping anything under the rug anymore. Captain Rowan, still standing off to the side, gave a subtle nod. The other officers watched him, sensing that Marcus had already earned his respect. Officer Callahan's suspension isn't symbolic, Marcus added. It's necessary, and it's the first of several reviews. I've requested every internal complaint filed over the past 5 years be reopened. Any outstanding misconduct will be addressed with transparency. A ripple of surprise moved through the group. Some faces showed fear, others relief. Marcus shifted his tone. Now, I know not everyone in this room agrees with how I've chosen to introduce myself. Some may feel embarrassed, some angry. But let me be clear, if your first reaction to leadership is disrespect, humiliation, or mockery, then you were never committed to serving anyone but yourself. He let that sit. And yet, I believe in redemption, he continued. If you're willing to grow, to reflect, and to lead with character, not ego, there's a place for you here. He stepped down from the podium. Callahan didn't respond. He simply nodded, stiffly, still unable to meet Marcus's gaze. Dismissed, Marcus said at last, his voice firm but not cold. The officers rose slowly, some heading for the door in quiet reflection. A few lingered, waiting to speak. Others slipped away, murmuring among themselves. Captain Rowan approached with a measured smile. Chief Avery, he said quietly, that was something. Not what I expected, but exactly what we needed. Marcus nodded. I hope so. Rowan glanced toward the hallway. Callahan? Good, Marcus replied. It should. As the room cleared, a young officer, barely out of the academy, hovered near the door, then stepped forward. Chief, she said hesitantly, I just wanted to say thank you. Some of us, we've seen things, heard things, but no one ever spoke up. Marcus looked at her, his expression softening. What's your name? Officer Langston, Natalie. He extended a hand. Glad to have you on the team, Natalie, and thank you for your courage. She shook his hand firmly, her posture straightening just a little. Marcus made his way back to his new office, a modest room lined with filing cabinets and still unpacked boxes. He closed the door behind him and exhaled, rubbing his temples. The weight of the morning settled into his shoulders. He sank into the chair behind his desk. Outside the window, the town of Ralston moved through its daily rhythm. Cars passing, kids biking, businesses opening. A place full of people who deserved better from their police. The phone rang. He picked it up. Chief Avery. It was Internal Affairs. We've received your request. We'll begin pulling the files immediately. Thank you, Marcus said. Send them all to my desk. He hung up and sat in the stillness for a moment longer. He knew this was only the beginning. There would be pushback. There would be whispers. There would be attempts to wait him out, to see if his fire would die down. It wouldn't. Marcus Avery hadn't taken this job to wear the badge. He'd taken it to honor what the badge should represent: integrity, courage, accountability. And with every day that followed, he intended to make those values mean something again. Not just to the community of Ralston, but to the people wearing the uniform inside the Greenpoint precinct. He looked at the unopened folders on his desk. A long road lay ahead, and he was ready to walk every step of it. Change isn't easy, and it won't happen overnight. But I promise you this, so long as I'm chief,
This precinct will operate with integrity, respect, and accountability." Marcus Avery let those final words hang in the air, each syllable slicing through the thick silence of the room. He gave a slight nod toward Captain Rowan, who stood quietly at the side, before continuing. "Effective immediately, Officer Callahan is suspended pending an internal investigation." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Marcus could see the blood drain from Callahan's face, jaw tightening as he avoided the eyes of his fellow officers. Some looked shocked, others simply looked away. Marcus remained unfazed. He stood tall at the lectern. "This isn't about punishment," he said, his tone steady but firm. "It's about setting a standard. If you're not willing to rise to that standard, this isn't the place for you."
He took a slow, deliberate look around the room, locking eyes with officer after officer. "But if you're ready to do better, to be better, we'll move forward together. Just know this, I will hold you accountable every step of the way." The meeting ended not with applause, not with murmurs of support, but with heavy silence. Chairs scraped across tile as officers stood and filed out, no longer joking or chatting as they had earlier. Some stole glances at Marcus. Most avoided his gaze. Callahan stormed out without a word, his face a mixture of embarrassment and seething resentment. Marcus remained at the front of the room for a long moment, staring at the back wall. He hadn't come to Ralston to play politics or win friends. He came to make a difference. And this was only the first blow in a long battle. Back in his office, Marcus shut the door behind him and exhaled slowly. The phone rang almost immediately. "Chief Avery," he answered. It was Captain Rowan. "Sir, I just wanted to say, you handled that better than most would have." "Thanks, Captain," Marcus replied. "But the real work starts now. I need a full review of Callahan's record, complaints, internal reports, everything. On my desk tomorrow." "You've got it," Rowan replied. Then, after a pause, "Chief, I think you shook a few of them, in a good way." Marcus didn't respond. He simply hung up, allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction, and turned to the mountain of paperwork waiting on his desk. In the weeks that followed, the tone inside the Greenpoint precinct shifted. Officers who once laughed loudly at Callahan's jokes now avoided him entirely. Word of his suspension spread like wildfire through the ranks. No one said it out loud, but Marcus could feel it. The old culture was cracking. He made it a point to walk the halls daily, greeting officers by name, making eye contact, showing that he was watching and listening. Not everyone resisted the change. One morning, Officer Reyes, a young recruit with barely a year under her belt, stopped Marcus in the hallway. "Chief," she said, nervous, "can I speak with you?" "Of course." She looked down at her boots. "I just wanted to say, I've been complicit. I laughed at Callahan's jokes. I kept quiet when I saw things I shouldn't have. I was scared to speak up." Marcus nodded, letting her finish. "I want to do better," she said. "I want to be better." "That's all I ask," Marcus replied. "It starts with you." Still, not everyone welcomed the new order. Callahan, not one to go down quietly, filed an appeal, claiming his suspension was unjust and politically motivated. Marcus didn't budge. When Internal Affairs completed its review, they uncovered years of buried complaints, excessive force, racial slurs, intimidation. Callahan's appeal was denied. Marcus made it clear, those days of brushing misconduct under the rug were over. A new era had begun, and it demanded courage from everyone, especially from within. There was resistance. Conversations about implicit bias and public trust met with rolled eyes and dismissive shrugs from some officers. But each small victory mattered. A recruit voicing concern, a seasoned sergeant changing how he spoke to community members. Progress wasn't loud, it was steady. At a local community event months later, Marcus knelt beside a young boy, no older than 8, who tugged at his sleeve. "Are you really the chief?" the boy asked, eyes wide. "I am," Marcus replied with a warm smile. The boy hesitated, then whispered, "My dad says the police don't care about people like us." Marcus's smile faded, replaced with a seriousness that matched the boy's gaze. "I can't change what happened before," he said gently, "but I promise you, we're working to be better. And if you ever need help, you come find me. Deal?" The boy nodded slowly. A small smile crept across his face. Moments like that reminded Marcus why he had taken the job in the first place. By the end of his first year, the precinct wasn't perfect, but it was different. Officers who couldn't adapt were gone, replaced with men and women who believed in the mission. Community members, once skeptical, began to show signs of trust. Small gestures, open conversations, invitations to events. One evening, Marcus stood in the hallway of the precinct as the day shift clocked out. Laughter echoed from the break room, not derisive, but honest. For the first time in a long while, camaraderie felt real. He smiled to himself. Change wasn't easy, but it was happening. "Change isn't easy, and it won't happen overnight," Chief Marcus Avery said, his voice steady and deliberate. "But I promise you this, so long as I'm chief, this precinct will operate with integrity, respect, and accountability." The silence in the briefing room was absolute. Every officer present felt the weight of his words settle into the air like smoke after a fire. Marcus paused, letting the tension hold. Then, with a measured nod to Captain Rowan, he finished what he came to say. "Effective immediately, Officer Callahan is suspended pending a full internal investigation. And for those of you who think this is just a slap on the wrist, think again. This is the first of many changes." Gasps rippled across the room. Callahan's face turned a deep, blistering red. His jaw clenched, his muscles stiff. He stared at the floor as murmurs traveled like waves across the room. The smugness he'd worn so easily earlier was gone, replaced by a visible mix of anger and shame. Marcus didn't flinch. "This isn't about punishment," he said, stepping slightly forward. "It's about setting a standard. If you're not willing to rise to that standard, then this isn't the place for you." He scanned the room one last time, his gaze sharp and unwavering. "But if you're ready to do better, to be better, we'll move forward together. And know this, I will hold each and every one of you accountable every step of the way." No one responded. The tension was too thick, too real. Officers began to rise slowly, shuffling out of the room without the usual jokes, slaps on the back, or casual banter. Callahan walked out stiffly, jaw locked, eyes refusing to meet anyone else's. Some officers looked away. Some looked guilty. Some looked quietly impressed. Marcus remained at the podium, unmoving, watching them file out. His heart beat heavily beneath his pressed shirt, but his face remained calm. He knew what had just happened wasn't an end. It was the beginning. Back in his office, he sank into the chair behind his desk, exhaling deeply. The adrenaline was starting to fade, leaving behind only the magnitude of the challenge ahead. He rubbed his temples. Then the phone rang. "Chief Avery," he answered. It was Captain Rowan. "Sir, I just wanted to say, you handled that better than most would have." "Thanks, Captain," Marcus replied. "But the real work starts now. I need a full review of Callahan's disciplinary history on my desk by tomorrow morning. Complaints, incident reports, everything." "You'll have it," Rowan responded, hesitating briefly. "Chief, I think you shook a few of them. In a good way." Marcus hung up and stared at the files stacked on his desk. There would be no victory laps here, just grit and time. Over the next several weeks, the Greenpoint precinct began to shift. Where once Callahan had held court like a clown prince of cruelty, there was now a noticeable void. Officers who had laughed at his behavior now seemed to avoid him entirely. Whispers followed in his wake, whispers of fear, of embarrassment, of consequences finally catching up. Marcus made it a point to walk the halls daily, never missing a beat. His presence was a quiet signal of change. The era of looking the other way was over. Some officers nodded respectfully, others gave quick greetings, unsure where they stood, and some avoided eye contact altogether. But slowly, something began to shift. One day, Officer Reyes, a younger recruit, stopped him near the locker room. "Chief," she said, her voice low, "can I talk to you?" He turned. "Of course." She hesitated. "I've been part of the problem. I laughed at things I shouldn't have. I kept quiet when I saw things I knew weren't right. I was scared. I didn't think it was safe to speak up." Marcus looked at her, not with judgment, but with clarity. "You're speaking up now. That's what matters." "I want to do better," she said, voice shaking slightly. "That's all I ask," Marcus said, nodding. "It starts with you." Not everyone was ready to change. Callahan, in a move Marcus had predicted, filed an appeal against his suspension, claiming unfair treatment and personal bias. But the internal review told a different story, one littered with past complaints, reports of excessive force, and inappropriate conduct, things that had been ignored for years. The appeal was denied. Marcus issued a formal statement declaring that Greenpoint would no longer protect officers who harmed the community they swore to serve. The message was clear: misconduct would not be hidden, not tolerated, and not excused. The pushback was real. Some senior officers bristled. A few quietly requested transfers. But Marcus stood firm. He initiated bi-weekly training on implicit bias and use of force protocols, revamped complaint processing procedures, and held listening sessions with civilian oversight representatives. Most important, he listened, and he held the line. It wasn't easy, but progress was happening. At a weekend community event in Ralston's Park, Marcus met a young boy with big eyes and nervous energy. The boy walked up slowly, his small hand tugging on Marcus's sleeve. "Are you really the chief?" the boy asked. "I am," Marcus replied, kneeling down. "My dad says the police don't care about people like us," the boy whispered, glancing around. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He reached out, gently resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "I can't change the past," he said softly, "but I promise we're working to be better. And if you ever need help, you come find me, okay?" The boy nodded. A hesitant smile broke across his face. Moments like that were why Marcus had taken the job in the first place. By the end of his first year, Greenpoint wasn't perfect, but it was undeniably different. Officers who clung to the old ways were gone, retired, transferred, or removed. In their place were recruits who saw the badge not as a weapon, but as a responsibility. Slowly, the community began to respond. Open dialogues at town halls, invitations to youth programs, fewer complaints. And one evening, as shift change took place, Marcus stood in the main hallway, watching. There was laughter again. Not cruel, not exclusive, but genuine and shared. It would never be easy. But for the first time, Marcus Avery knew it would be worth it. The story of Chief Marcus Avery teaches us that real leadership isn't about titles or uniforms. It's about courage, integrity, and the willingness to confront what others ignore. Marcus walks into a toxic environment not to blend in, but to hold up a mirror to a broken system and demand better. His actions remind us that change often begins with discomfort, and accountability isn't cruelty, it's care for the community and the future. By standing firm in the face of mockery, challenging ingrained behaviors, and giving others space to reflect and grow, Marcus shows that transformation is possible, even in places long resistant to it. His leadership proves that respect must be earned daily, not through power, but through principle. In life, we're often faced with systems, workplaces, or relationships that suffer because no one speaks up. This story challenges us to be the one who does, to act with quiet strength, to hold others to higher standards, and to believe that even if the road is long, progress is possible. The fight for dignity, fairness, and trust may be hard, but as Marcus shows, it's always worth it. If you found this video helpful or thought-provoking, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps more people discover our content. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the latest updates from our channel. Thanks for watching. We will see you in the next videos.